to, some won't. And the thing is that these things all vary, both in terms of what they need and what sort of level they need in a given project. And the trouble is that you cannot, one size does not fit all. One size does not fit more than one. So going back to my previous point, if we can get before the project team, before they win the bid, and say, okay, what do you need and in what proportions, and then tailor a solution for it, we're on a winner, and so is the bid team. Now, of course, there's a bit of a problem with that when you start talking about non-cloud solutions, because you just cannot own it all. You just can't do it. Whereas when you provide it in the cloud, that flexibility starts to become available. So this allows us to provide project controls only when the alliance needs it, and I'd suggest that cloud can be used like an accordion, because it's timing-wise. You can squish it in when you don't need it, and you can pull it out again when you do, and we use that on a regular basis. Systems scale up and down as needed. The alliance isn't left with expensive and unrealisable assets at the conclusion of the project. Realistically, we started with making a choice on something cheap and good enough. And, you know, isn't it interesting that in New Zealand we possibly tend to do that? Cheap and good enough is good enough. It's not sure that necessarily, I mean, I'll put my hand up, I do it all myself. Anyway, we had regular issues, and our issues, as I say, we take this cloud service and we provide our offerings on it, software as a service, and so we're in the chain. Now, we were getting constant complaints from our clients about issues in general, about fallouts, about latency, and funny you mentioned the 200 millisecond. Now, we couldn't nail down where the latency is, and frankly, if I were to say, without knowing a thing about this, if we're worried about latency with the States versus the New Zealand internet infrastructure, I'd label it New Zealand would be likely to be the problem. But hey, the point is that we didn't know. We don't know to this date. But we needed to do something about it or we would lose our people. So, working by elimination, we said, okay, let's take the international out of it and see what we can do with that. We started looking for a local provider. I'd also say that locals also had a variety of offerings, a wide variety of offerings. There was a provider who had a warehouse as a second-hand computer dealer at Albany. He had a warehouse in Albany, and he had some racks in the back of his warehouse. And he provided hosting services, and I'm not going to tell you the names of the companies that he suggested that he hosted for, but it was very frightening, and I think he wouldn't have had any problems at all with cooling in the winter. But I'm not quite so sure for the rest of the time. That was quite amazing. He obviously made a fairly good buck out of it. It wasn't for us, but they're there. Some offerings here, and again, no names, approach the size and scale of the international offerings, and also potentially replicate the impersonality of the service. One of the points I would make is that in communications, maybe I'll come back to it later. No, the communications with the American provider was by asynchronous email. In other words, there was pretty much generally a 24-hour lag to get anything. And so if you had a concern, it was a long haul to actually get it solved. And that was a worry. There was a point made earlier today that I would reiterate, and that is, so sue me. Because I'll tell you what, GoDaddy doesn't care if BECA sues them. Okay? And none of those guys over there do. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe they would, but that was our perception. We couldn't get a response sometimes. Some offerings, so when we sort of look locally, and this is going back to good enough, we sort of balance of cost of service, and if you take Rolls-Royce or whatever you want to call over here, and real cheap over here, we probably settle on the 40% line, roughly. And we changed to having a specific requirement to being able to get somebody on the end of the phone. So the personalities of it, it's who you know, made an absolutely conscious part of our decision-making process second time through. Okay. So what we needed. we need to be able to scale our cloud infrastructure with the use of TeamView to offer each project alliance. Obviously, it makes our product cost competitive, much more cost competitive than if it's sitting on our own servers or sitting on a server array that provides work for the maximum. Right? We can't afford to do that. Basically, the usage of TeamView has 4 cost drivers: the number of artifacts stored, the volumes held, the number of users, and the number of uses. And so the profitability of the product is dependent upon how many projects use it and the life cycle of the projects. So if you've got a long, big project, it's better than a whole lot of short, small ones. But anyway, the fluctuation of all of these factors obviously impacts hugely on the capacity required. And the reality is that these project alliances are tight, and they do not like spending money on IT overhead. Thank you very much. So you get squeezed. There is no margin for error in it. We chose, and obviously one of the sponsors here, we chose the Versa platform from ICONZ here, and we concluded that it gave us the flexibility to shrink and grow. We gave it the cloud elasticity suits the tight margins in the infrastructure work, and we knew that we wouldn't survive in the market if we were pitched at the top level all the time. I mentioned in resolving the issues with the international provider, we could only communicate with internet. We actually tried to phone these guys a few times, and there's not a lot of chop there really. The reality is time zones and size meant that they don't have phone contacts, and sorry, this didn't work for us anyway. With a local provider, we could talk to a person and could visit the facilities, point made earlier too, go and have a look at the facilities. Are the cables in a tray, you know? Giving us a much better level of assurance. And we haven't had any, I would say it's not that we haven't had some issues, it's that whenever we've had some issues, we are able to get to resolution really, really fast. And to my mind, that's really, really important. You get what you pay for. There's no doubt. There's a range of providers delivering a range of services, and they range from little to lots. And you need to choose what it is that you need. Our particular needs meant that we wanted to be relatively scalable, but not minute to minute. You know, the Ticketmaster thing where they need to go on for, bang, 2 hours and have massive increases and then drop back again. It's not us. It was much more, not even day to day, but month to month, up and down. We didn't require huge storage, and we would have required a lot more, but a couple of our initial projects decided to go to offline solutions for their CAD drawing storage, so that dropped our requirements down for disk storage quite largely. But we did require a solution that could scale to tens of thousands of deliverables easily in terms of capacity, that was absolutely reliable in terms of high availability and disaster recovery, and that if we had issues, that we could get to the people, to get them solved immediately. And the Versa platform, ICONZ put together, I'm not sure how early we were in the Versa platform's life cycle, but it was certainly reliable and had everything we needed to do, in terms of the variable componentry, the CPU, RAM, disk space and so on, together with the personal service, which I know I'm keeping on banging on about, but that's one of my big lessons out of it. And I think they released the Versa S2 platform this morning, and so have a look at it next door later, if you get a chance. Okay, financially, I'm not a beanie, I don't really understand this a lot, but OPEX, not CAPEX. For our customers, that's really important. It may be important to you, or you may be that sort of organisation that James mentioned before, where you've got buckets of CAPEX, and so it's not a problem, more of a problem if you're operating in OPEX. For us, OPEX was good. Scalable as and when you need it. Not just scalable, but elastic. Once your needs shrink, the cloud can shrink, and so can the rest, so can the bill. Flexibility, this is critical. Flexibility of access from anywhere, and hardware agnostic within limits. Know where the buck stops and be able to get him or her on the phone and say, hey, help, what are you doing here? We need this. This is not working. This is working. Good. How do we compare and contrast the various offerings? This is a little bit of a fess-up session here, I must admit. We started with getting what we wanted underway and then refined it as we clarified the things that were important to us. Ready, fire, aim.